Yes, that's right. It's Joe here for Joyrider TV, back with some more Q&A ready for the weekend. If you don't happen to be watching this live and you have got questions that you've got absolutely burning a hole in your mind about catamaran sailing, then of course put them in the comments and I will respond to those questions in next week's Q&A session. Great stuff. So we've seen on the video that today's what we call it lead question is on the topic of VMG. So I thought that we could just dive straight in, as we have been recently, so we could dive straight into the first big topic, and then I'll check in with everybody who's checking in live. Yeah, so firstly, for those of you who are uninitiated in what VMG is, it stands for Velocity Made Good, but you don't have to worry about that too much. What it means is, what is the quickest way to get from one point to another point? So if we were sailing to our windward goal, we could sail at any one of these angles, but one of these angles is going to get us there quicker than the others. So we could either sail three, let's call them modes, just because that's what I'd like to call them. So we could sail, this is what we'll call normal mode, which would be when you're just looking at the telltales on the jib in, let's say 8 knots of wind. You're looking at the telltales on the jib and keeping them flowing. That is normal mode. Boat's going nicely, you attack, get to the buoy. So that normal mode is normal for the reason that that is what we would most likely do the most often. Second mode, we're just talking down upwind at the moment, and then we're going to go on to downwind, where it's got a bit more flavor, to be honest, because there's more choice. So then we've got this mode. This mode we're going to call high, sailing closer to the wind than our regular mode. Audio is dropping out. Is everybody else saying that as well? Oh no, where's my audio? All right, just got to have a look. That all looks like it should be all right. 5x5. Okay, audio good, says Office Hands Dave. So I'm just going to crack on with that. Kush says audio good. I've got nice sound, says Ryan. Okay, yeah, we're checking in with everyone who's checking in about the audio specifically. Merlin257 says audio's fine. Peter says it's fine. Stephen says it's fine. Ian, I think it might be your speakers, or a glitch in the matrix. Yeah, so we could sail upwind. We're going to call this mode high. Are we calling it high? Yeah, we'll call this mode high. So when we're sailing mode high, we're going to be sailing a shorter distance on the upwind, because mode regular is going to be sailing faster but further. Mode high, so this would be with the inside telltale on the jib very much lifting up to what you call that, vertical, so sailing very close to the wind, but you're going to sail much less distance. Whereas mode regular, you're going to sail more distance, but you're going to be sailing faster. And then the other mode, we're going to call this mode, you might be expecting it to be called mode low, but no, it's going to be called footing. So we're sailing much lower. We're going to sail faster, but by the time we tack, if we're sailing that mode on both tacks, we are going to be going significantly further. So the VMG optimal VMG is, do we sail high, regular, or footing? And generally speaking, sailing regular is the right way to do it. And that is why it is regular to do so. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just talk completely about the upwind first before we get into the really juicy stuff, which is the downwind. By the way, the topic of VMG is it was preloaded questions from Leo and from Rich, who both asked about VMG. So I thought that would be a good topic for today's discussion. Yeah, so when would you sail in mode? Let's say we're not talking about traffic at all on the race course. When would you sail mode high? Well, the most obvious time to sail mode high, if traffic isn't an issue, is if the strength of the wind is an issue. So if the wind is very strong, then sailing higher is going to be one of our tools that we've got to deal with that excess power. So we'll sail closer to the wind than what might be deemed regular or normal. So we'd certainly be sailing in strong wind with the inside telltale lifting on the jib because we're sailing very close to the wind. When would we be sailing mode footing? We'd sail footing when the wind is very light. So when there's only just enough wind to get the boat going through the water, that is when we want to be sailing further away from the wind. Because if we're footing, then it means that we're less likely to have the boat stop, especially when the wind is really light. It requires a tremendous amount of energy to get it going again, especially in the light winds when we're going upwind. So to sail a little bit further off the wind, rather than here, we're just going to sail a few degrees down just to make sure that we are keeping going. All right. So I have thought about this. I've made notes, but what else? So the other thing you can do to know what is the normal mode to sail in is you could look at the other boats on the race course, and with the experience you have of sailing your boat over however much time you've been sailing it, you will start to get an idea of how your boat should feel in a given wind strength. You'll know that if in a certain wind you're sailing upwind and your boat just feels slow, perhaps you're oversheeted. That would be the normal reason why you're going slowly upwind. We've been through this actually, I think 2 weeks ago. The second reason might be that you're trying to point too high, so you just need to come off the wind a little bit. So yeah, we're not going to talk too much about upwind because there's not much to say. But what does make it more interesting on the upwind with the VMG is if there are other boats. So let's say here's a scenario. You're the boat in front here. There's a boat who looks like he really wants to have a go at passing you. So in this situation, this is when mode high would be a good one to go for, because if you sail a bit closer to the wind, you're not only going to be removing his chances of getting over the top of you, but you're also going to be sailing more slowly, which means it's going to be less attractive for him to try to come over the top of you. You're going to be sailing more slowly. So the option for him is either to join you in sailing slowly, and this is going to be an incredibly slow and painful painful leg, or he could decide, all right, I'm going to either tack or bear off and go low. So if he's borne off and gone low, then that brings in, why would you use mode footing for traffic? Then if you find yourself here and you definitely don't want to have to tack off, so if this is you now, if you just followed the same path as the other boat, you're going to be sat in his dirty wind, gradually getting left behind, because the dirty wind is going to gradually be slowing you down. So instead of just sitting there and taking it, if you just foot off slightly, get a bit more speed, yes, you are going to lose some of that weather gauge that they called it on Master and Commander, or the windward advantage. So you're going to end up kind of down here, but by the time you've got down here, you'll be in clean wind again, which means that, yes, you can just start sailing your own course, and then, yeah, you'll be behind this boat, but you were behind this boat anyway. But if you just sat here and took it, you'd end up a lot further behind. So that is a reason for footing on the race course. Like a lot of the time, like we talked about in the mark rounding section, if this guy comes round the mark and he wants to sail as high as possible around the mark to stop anybody getting over the top, and then if this is you coming round behind him, your only option really is to go for the footing option to get further down. And then when you're footing off, also there is a benefit to footing off as well, because your boat does sail faster, which means when the boat is sailing faster, your foils, your rudders and dagger boards are working more efficiently, giving you more lift. So you're not actually going to drift as far downwind because you're going faster. So the actual distance that you're losing here, because he's going to drift a bit more, isn't as much as you think. If you're a heavy team sailing upwind in a strong wind, then footing can be your friend to get you through traffic, because if you can bear off the wind a few degrees, keep the power on and get more boat speed, then you can just blast through the leeward side of these other boats. And that can really pull you through that dirty wind just by sailing so much faster. Okay, I think there is some interesting stuff coming through in the live chat on the topic. So I'm going to check in with everybody who's checking in at this time. We've got Office Hands Dave checking in. Office Hands Dave, of course, the thought I had it here. Nope, the inventor of the Office Hands Dave camera mounting system. Yes, nice to have you with us, Dave. Ian's on board in Pembrokeshire, in Wales, unless I'm very much mistaken. Nice to have you with us. We've got Oggs on the east coast of Mexico, Hobie 16 sailor. Great to have you with us. Mark's here from Ohio. Only a few more sailing days left in Ohio in the season. Tango 4 is also checking in Texas. Peter's there. Peter and Elaine from autumnal Sweden must be coming close to the end of the season there as well. We got Stephen tuning in from Grafham Water in the UK. I actually used to work there back in the day, long time ago now, like 30 years ago. That is a long time. Okay, right, Kush is with us. Ryan's with us in Maui. Merlin's with us. Eric's with us. Glad to have you back with us, Eric. I'm glad that you survived that bit of gnarly weather in Florida. Great to have you on board. All right, Christian's there in British Columbia, where it's wet and cold. Mr. Tony KP is with us in Ebeltoft, Denmark. Just returned from Greece, just snorkeling. That's good. The snorkeling in Greece is pretty good. All right, so here we go. Tango 4 says, would footing also be a good mode for cross current? Yeah, to be honest, I haven't sailed in current for quite some time now. But if you had the wind coming this way, current coming this way, if you're sailing high or regular, you are going to be drifting a lot. So by footing, you're going to be sailing faster. So I would say yes. There's obviously a lot of different situations that you might get into, but I'd say footing, definitely yes, because the extra speed that you'll have, and you'll be getting more lift from the foils, which means you won't be getting set down as much by the current because you're sailing faster and more efficiently. All right, Eric says sometimes you have to foot off so you don't get on YouTube fouling up the YouTuber. I think maybe that has happened earlier on this year. Ocean Springs, Mississippi, perhaps. All right, Christian says, I find it fascinating to compare the VMG relative to the wind compared to the VMG relative to the windward mark. That comparison bears fruit. Yeah. So I think in the relative to the wind, what we would do, like we said, light as the wind increases. So lowest wind, we sail the deepest as sort of standard. Then as the wind increases, we'll sail closer to the wind because we've got more pressure. So if you're sailing along in let's say 6 knots of wind, you'd probably be sailing somewhere between footing and regular. And then when you get a gust, it means you can sheet in more main and just nudge her up towards the wind a few degrees, because you've got that extra bit of power, which is giving you that extra bit of boat speed, which is keeping you going. Whereas when the wind was lighter, if you tried turning up a few degrees, you wouldn't have enough power to keep your boat going sufficiently to keep good steering and good amount of lift coming from your foils. So that's as you get that extra bit of wind. And then when you get more wind, yes, you can point higher. So we have got the whole story of our upwind sailing course depending on the wind, which is light winds, telltales flying straight back. And then as the wind increases, so let's just rig up some telltales. This is the leeward side, which would be up to, let's say, 6 knots. We've got both telltales flying straight back. Then when we get more wind than 6 knots, we can start to allow this telltale to lift on the windward side. And then when there's enough wind to start lifting the hull, we'll allow this telltale to lift even, start pulling on the downhaul power. Then we could actually sail with the windward on the jib, lifting almost vertically. And then when we're really overpowered and we're trying to lose power, then we can sail with that telltale totally vertical on the inside, and perhaps even with the front part of the jib back winding slightly. Just the first, maybe the first fifth of the jib actually flapping a little bit, even if you've got a fully back and jib, just because you are dealing with the power by sailing as close to the wind as possible. But then again, if you are a heavy team, not sailing quite as high, is going to be your friend when it's windy, because you're going to be able to sail faster. And that is what is going to unlock the cheese in the cheese cupboard that you've been looking for. All right, Merlin says, hey, Joe, don't know if you've addressed it in a video, but couldn't find it, unfortunately. When you're going full send, is it the same, maybe close to a broad reach? All right, we'll cover 6 weeks of speed competition. So if you are an iOS user, then do get the Water Speed app, click on the challenges tab, click on the tab that looks like I had something to do with it, and get involved. Just register. There's 100 boats registered now on the Water Speed 6 weeks of speed competition, which is great. Very nice. I think I'm still sitting in 4th place at the moment. And it looks like the forecast for next week here isn't so good. So that up, unless Declan jumps in there and smashes out a big speed on the getaway and knocks me off my perch. All right. Tango 4 says, hope to see you here in Texas for the Nacra 50th anniversary competition. Yeah, I'm very much hoping to be there 9th to the 16th of June next year for the Nacra 50th anniversary. Scott's dropping it in the slot. Great to have you with you. Have you on board. Alejandro is with us. Greetings. All right, Scott says, nice video this week of single, double, and triple. Looked like a lot of fun. Yeah, it was ridiculous. The triple, I had so much water blasting in my face, which made me very glad to have the Sun God spray deflection device on, which really did come into its own. Very good sunglasses for the purpose. Yeah, very happy with the Sun Gods. They are working out very nicely. All right, Alejandro says, Hobie Getaway here. How about downwind? Yeah, we're coming on to downwind, but 90 degrees on the Telltale works when cruising, but can only get closer to monohulls if I race on a run. Yeah, interesting. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. All right, Alejandro says no spinnaker setup. We've got the Earl of Porridge on board in beautiful Berlin. Nice to have you with us there. All right, Peter and Elena hang out tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's the end of the season. Light winds there in Sweden. All right, Peter's got a similar question to Merlin about the boat speed for the speed stick. Okay, remind me if I don't immediately come on to that when we finish talking VMG. In fact, I could just speed. I'm just writing it in my preloadeds just so I don't forget, because the VMG. So upwind, yes, we're going higher as the wind gets stronger relative to the wind. Okay, downwind, this is where it gets much more, I don't know, there's a lot more scope for ambiguity on the downwind course. So if we're talking no spinnaker, I think that's a good place to start. So generally, unless you're sailing a certain type of boat, generally speaking, we're always going to sail downwind. This is our oversized Telltale with the wind indicators on the boat flying at 90 degrees to the boat, because this is optimal. The reason that this is optimal is because if we look at, have a close-up of our sails on the boat, this is how our sails would be on the boat, which means this angle is the deepest, the furthest we can go downwind keeping a flow of wind, flow of air over both sides of the sails. If we go any deeper downwind, like this, then we're only going to have wind on the inside of the sails, like you might do if you're sailing a traditional boat, like a laser. And that means we're not getting the same effect from the sails. One of the reasons the catamaran, or anything basically with a fully battened rig, why it's fast, is by having a flow over both sides of the sail, which makes the sail work more like the wing of an aeroplane rather than a what would be the opposite, like just holding a bag above your head and getting blown along on your skateboard. So much more efficient and faster to have the even airflow over both sides. So if we did sail deeper downwind like this, yes, we would certainly be sailing a shorter distance. So if we're sailing from here to here, straight down like this, we're sailing a shorter distance. And a parachute, says Declan, yes. So sometimes this is appropriate. When would this be appropriate? In certain types of boat, like in my own experience, the Hobie 14, when racing the Hobie 14, yes, we're sailing straight downwind, because to sail the extra distance that it would take to come out, and the jibing angle and the tacking angle is quite similar when sailing on the regular course. It's like 90 degrees. So we're sailing a significantly bigger distance by sailing with the apparent wind at 90 degrees, which means if we're not getting the extra speed from sailing on that angle, we are going to be taking a lot longer to get to our downwind goal. And there are boats where they're just not that much quicker or quick enough going onto that broad reach, which would call this point of sail 90 degrees apparent wind. So it's more efficient to go straight downwind. A lot of those boats would be boats without a jib, because your jib is going to give you a lot of that boat speed on that broad reaching course. So going straight downwind, I dare say, correct me if I'm wrong, but if anybody is tuned in who races a Hobie wave, I dare say they sail straight downwind as well, because the speed difference with going up to a broad reach isn't enough to justify the extra distance on the water. Now, the other way we could sail, of course, let's steal his telltale, is to heat it up a bit more and sail higher. Now, you're going to feel that the boat is going really quickly when sailing higher, but the same as with the upwind, the distance that we're going to have to sail before we jibe is going to be huge. So it's just not effective to sail downwind mode high. I would say unless one reason that doesn't involve other boats for sailing mode high is if there's some sort of geographical feature, which means if we sail high over to here, then we get more wind, then it becomes worthwhile. But otherwise, or if we sail mode high over to here to get out of the strong tide, which we're against, that might help. But we wouldn't sail mode high unless it was to get into a more favorable bit of wind for more of the time. Of course, there might be other boats involved, which means it is necessary to sail mode high. But generally, if you're sailing a regular catamaran, no spinnaker, you're either going to sail straight downwind like on the 14, or with the apparent wind going straight across the boat at 90 degrees. And then in the what happens situation, you get a gust of wind, boat goes faster, apparent wind comes back slightly, so then we can turn deeper downwind. So yes, we can go deeper downwind, but we're using the boat speed to keep the apparent wind the same. And then we'll jibe when we hit 90 degrees, and we'll get to the buoy, jibe again, and then off we go. I hope that's good so far. But the other time to go low would be if it was really, really, really windy and you're a bit scared. Then going lower is going to take some of the power out of the boat. It's not going to be as efficient, but things are going to happen a lot more slowly if you sail low when the wind is very strong and you're worried about sticking the nose in. All right. So if we just finish off this whole piece about with the spinnaker. So this was the part of the question that came in from Rich, who sails a Nacra F16. With the spinnaker up, when should you sail in these different modes? Because it becomes a lot more ambiguous with the spinnaker, because for the apparent wind, we are sailing deep, higher. So if this is our wind indicator, we are sailing higher than that 90-degree angle. So it's very difficult to say, all right, we're going to sail with our apparent wind on 70 degrees or something like that. So with the spinnaker, we are very much responding to the pressure in the sail, in the actual spinnaker. When the wind is very light, the crew and the helm would have a conversation where the crew tells the helm about how much pressure he's got in the spinnaker. And if he hasn't got any pressure, then the helm will have to come up towards the wind. So if you've got no pressure, we come up until the crew can then feel the sail pulling. And then that is the starting point. And then the same if you've got a spinnaker or not. When you get a gust, we'll turn more downwind. If that gust goes, we'll turn more upwind. And then when we get to, with a spinnaker on the boat, when we get to the amount of wind so that we've been perhaps occasionally lifting the hull on the upwind point of sail, then we should be aiming to sail downwind with the windward hull lifted. Once we get that windward hull out of the water, that is when we unlock the performance of these spinnaker boats on the downwind. But we don't want to try too hard. Like if it's been 6 knots of wind, we don't want to start going hunting to get the hull in the air, because we're going to end up sailing a really huge distance. But if there's been enough wind to occasionally lift the hull on the upwind point of sail, then that would be the time when we can start looking at getting the windward hull lifted on the downwind. One of the ways that we're going to assist in doing that is, she's very chewy. All right. So one of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to have the crew on the leeward side and the helm down in towards the mast. You will have seen this if you watched any of the Tornado Worlds videos, because it was light winds the whole time. So a lot of the time I was sat in towards the mast to encourage the windward hull to lift earlier. And then, so we're using our crew weight to get the hull to lift earlier. And then if there's been enough wind to have someone out on the trapeze on the upwind constantly, then we're not going to start trapezing downwind at that point. Or it does depend. In fact, no, it doesn't. If you've been single trapezing upwind, and not because you're not comfortable double trapezing, but because the wind wasn't strong enough to double trapeze on the upwind, then on the downwind, we'd then perhaps, sorry, you're now the helm on this boat. We'd perhaps move the helm away from the mast. And again, we're just trying to keep that windward hull in the air and just steering for the gusts. But we're trying to steer not so much that the hull, here we are, not so much that the hull comes down. Hold on, we need to go straight into the camera here. Down like that into the water. But as we get a gust, we're just going to turn downwind, trying to keep the hull at the same angle. And then if the hull starts dropping, we turn more towards the wind, which is going to pick it up. We're keeping our steering as slow and smooth and steady as possible. Because any excessive steering, again, that's going to slow us down as well. And then when we get to the point where we have been double trapezing upwind, that is when we can look at trapezing on the downwind. Now, it does depend on the type of boat that you're sailing and how heavy your crew is. But two options would be either to single trapeze on the downwind, or move the crew over to the windward side. Can't really see that, can you? All right, if this is now the crew, move the crew over to the windward side, where he's going to be able to see the spinnaker much better. He'll have more purchase, more leverage to play the spinnaker sheet. So moving into this position, and then as the wind increases, so if you've been sailing upwind with the downhaul on, then definitely that would be time to get the crew out onto the trapeze, and the helm still on the trampoline. And then if the wind is strong enough, the helm could start moving outboard slightly as well. So what we're trying to do on the downwind with the spinnaker up is we are trying to get the power on, because when we put more power on with the spinnaker, the spinnaker really is an apparent wind generator. It's like having a speed generator on the boat. And when we get it working, then the boat unlocks its true potential. And not only that, but we cut through the chop much better, and we can sail much smoother if we put more power on and try not to steer too much. And then the question of when should we double trapeze downwind, then that I believe is very class specific. Like if you watched any of the Nacra 17 sailing, they double trapeze downwind a lot. You know, when the F-18s or the Tornado would be single trapezing downwind, the Nacra 17s double trapeze downwind, because that is how that boat unlocks the extra potential. Because it's a foiling boat, so quick means you're going to have more pressure trying to get that hull lifting, and you need to pin that down because the boat is generating so much induced wind, which means it's getting more overpowered more quickly, so you need to pin it down. Whereas with a smaller boat or a boat that's not as quick, then to have single trapezing is usually the way. I'm not sure about what is the popular mode downwind on an F-16, whereas if do people double trapeze the F-16 a lot? Put it in the comments if you sail an F-16 But in the F18, certainly single trapezing. In the Tornado, certainly single trapezing. So, yeah, that is what we're trying to achieve with our crew positions on the downwind. But getting the hull lifted, getting out on the trapeze, going faster, cutting through the chop, that is how you can maintain a higher speed for more of the time, which is going to give you that upper hand on the downwind leg. All right, just going to have a quick refreshment. All right, so I'm going to leave that there on the topic of angles, upwind and downwind, unless anybody's got any other questions which you can put in the live chat. I'm just going to jump back in to the live chat, and then we'll talk about sailing for speed. Yes, this is the topic that really does tickle me on a daily basis. It's been an absolutely cracking week here in sunny Lefkos Island, Greece. Had 3 really good days out on the water on Bad Boy 95. That looks like that. Yeah, it's been very good, and lots of videos coming soon. The next one is actually uploaded already, and that's coming on Sunday. It's on the topic of camera mounting, which, you know, I think it's an interesting topic. If you are a channel member, Joyrider TV, you can see that already. Don't watch it right now. I'd finish watching this first and then watch that. But you could watch that already if you're a channel member. It's one of the bonuses being a channel member. Yeah, so thanks to everyone who is a channel member. Let's get back on with the job in hand. All right, hello to Hans in Germany. Hope it's all okay up there and not too chilly. All right, Scott says, might get out on a cold October day to post a speed for the water speed challenge. Yeah, and you can, of course, if you're doing the water speed challenge, you can send me the results as well if it beats your previous speed on the speed stick. It's one of the liveliest speed sticks we've had in the last couple of years. We've got over 100 entries on the global speed stick. So I will be doing another update video fairly soon before it gets out of hand. And the update video would just be too long. So I'll do that at some point next week. All right. So Declan says, what about playing the downhaul? Okay, yeah, so topic, playing the downhaul on the upwind. I don't know if you're referring to the downwind or the upwind, but on the upwind, once you're double trapezing, okay, you can't play the downhaul on a boat that doesn't have a downhaul that's adjustable from the trapeze so much. You can use the downhaul, certainly, like if you're sailing a Hobie 16 and you've been sailing upwind, you've and you're like, whew, it's getting pretty windy, we could use a bit more downhaul. Then the 2 times you could do it on a boat like that or on a Dart 18 or something is you could either have the crew come in from the trapeze, crank on as much downhaul as possible, and then continue, or you could wait until it's time to tack and pull the downhaul on mid-tack, which if it wasn't so windy, that would be the more efficient time to do it. But if you're sailing a boat like an F16, which has a downhaul which is adjustable from the trapeze, when you're double trapezing, if the downhaul isn't on full, when the hull lifts, it's more efficient to pull on more downhaul rather than to either point the boat close to the wind or sheet out the main sheet. So the downhaul is kind of played like a power control, constant power control. Here's a bit more power, downhaul I like to think of it as squeezing the downhaul on, squeeze it on, and then if it looks like you're going to start losing power, before you actually lose the power, then ease the downhaul off. And then for your downwind legs, let the downhaul off to about, depending on the, if it's been light wind, your downhaul will have been off anyway. But then if it has been wind where you have been pulling the downhaul on the upwind leg, then yes, you will get more boat speed downwind by releasing your downwind on your down. Sorry, look, too many downs. You will get more boat speed by easing your downhaul on the downwind. There we go. Managed to say it. And there's, if you feel on your downwind course, this would be more for a spinnaker boat. If you feel that the boat is really overly lively, like it's doing this all the time, it's going, woohoo, this is exciting. And if it's too lively, like because the wind's really strong, then you've let off too much downhaul. So pull a little bit back on. Whereas if it's fairly windy and you're not able to lift the hull at all, then you've got too much downhaul pulled on. So there we go. That's another way you could look at it. Okay. So I'm just going to check in with Alfonso. Hello, Alfonso. Hello from Margarita Island, Venezuela. I've been to Margarita Island. I went windsurfing in El Yaqui. Is that what it's called? I think so. Yeah, many years ago now. We have the biggest active Hobie 16 fleet on the Caribbean. Nice. World champions, and the Spanish champion are all there. We do enjoy your videos. Keep it up. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, maybe I'll come to Margarita. I was last there in, I think, about 99, probably. Great place. Really liked it. Nice, nice climate. Good wind. Very good wind, in fact. All right. So before I go back with more in the live chat, let's talk about this topic of speed, sailing fast. How do we get to that fastest sailing potential out of our boat? Okay, so we're going to start off. Apologies for those of you who've heard me talk about this before, but it is a question which is dear to me. We're going to start off on a beam reach. Okay, so on a beam reach, preferably double trapeze. If the wind allows, double trapezing. And with our forwards and backwards movements, before we get into it, it really depends on the amount of wind. But what we're looking to do, this model was made by Office Hands Dave, incidentally. It's a beauty. But what we're trying to do is just have, if this is our leeward bow, we're just trying to have a little bit of margin. What would you call it? A bit of a buffer. So if we get a gust and the bow goes down slightly, it's not going to be like deck of the boat under the water immediately. So we're just going to sail with the bow riding a little bit higher than normal. No, it's not optimal for our speed, but yes, it is optimal for not putting the deck of the boat under the water, which at best is just going to slow us down a lot. At worst, we're going to flip it and pitch putt. So that is our trim. So you have to gauge your trim yourself. How your position on the boat, you're ready to go for the send, is going to be trapeze as far back as possible. if you trapeze as far back as possible, then you can push the boat so much harder. If you're trapezing further forwards and you start pushing the bow is going to start dipping, which means you're going to start holding back from pushing the boat as hard as possible. So I would suggest, if it is suitably windy, get into position first. And then what we're trying to do is every time on the beam reach where we're starting off here, when the hull lifts, we want to transfer this energy, which is going into lifting the hull, into more downwind, which is going to give us, we're going to turn that energy into more boat speed. So if the hull lifts, we can transfer that energy into more wind by going more downwind. And it just takes some bit of trial and error, some practice to work out how much more downwind. Every turn the boat more downwind, ease a little bit of main sheet, because if you turn more downwind without easing main sheet, then the bow is going to dip. And again, you might slow down or actually flip the boat. So sailing along, hull lifts, ease out an armful of main sheet, bear away, and then once you're on your new course, then sheet in again. And that is how you're going to get these high speeds. And then, of course, once you're on that new course and you've sheeted in again, if the hull lifts more, then you can do the same thing again. Bear away, ease some sheet, then sheet in again and get on the new course. But the objective is to have the windward hull out of the water, going as deep as possible. So that is how we're going to achieve the highest speed. If you sail a spinnaker boat, and the question is, should I go for the highest speed with the spinnaker up? It depends on the amount of wind. I would say if the wind is less than, I don't know, 15 knots, then the spinnaker is definitely going to get you going faster than no spinnaker. And you just, to get the maximum speed there, you want to kind of go the other way, where you start off downwind and then gradually bring the boat up towards the wind. Maybe this is a good time to double trapeze with the spinnaker up to get it up to maximum speed. I think when I get Bad Boy 94 back on the water, the Tornado, I'm rocking the Tornado, representing the Tornado class today, because next year's Worlds has been announced. It's going to be in Thessaloniki, Greece, just down the road, 5 hours down the road, but just down the road, in July, when it should be absolutely pumping. Really good conditions. It's a lovely town, nice sailing area. There's going to be a really big fleet of Greek boats, probably. I'm just going to put it out there, maybe even 10 or 12 boats from Greece. So last year at the Worlds, the only boat coming from Greece was my boat, and I wasn't sailing for Greece. So 10 boats. If everybody who came to the Worlds this year go next year, that's going to be an amazing event. Let's make it happen. Sign up as soon as it's possible to sign up, because that is your statement of intention saying, yes, I'm coming. All right. So where was I? Yeah, going as fast as possible. So yeah, so kite up, then gradually start to heat it up by turning towards the wind. That is how to get more speed with the kite in the lower winds. All right, I hope that helps. Yeah, beam reach, every time the hull lifts, sheet out a bit, bear away, sheet in, keep the hull out of the water, keep repeating that process. Nice. Okay, so Alejandro, he's chatting with Declan about getaway sailing. Very nice. Yeah, so yeah, Alejandro on the getaway is only competitive downwind if he's sailing straight downwind, because the getaway, although it has got more powerful sails than the smaller boats, it is quite a heavy boat, which means perhaps on the broad reach, it's not getting enough extra boat speed to justify the extra distance sailed. All right. We've got Dan on board. Hello, Dan. Dan's in Hawaii. And Dan is an experienced getaway artist and says the getaways do better downwind sailing wing on wing, which I would call goose swinging, but that is what you might call sailing straight downwind. I think in other places they might have called it the butterfly, but with the main out on one side, jib out on the other side. So really sailing straight downwind on the getaway. He said that's with the wind in the mid-range. Yeah, perhaps when the wind gets a bit stronger, like maybe 16 knots or something, then maybe playing the angles, the broad reaching angles is going to start being more efficient. All right, where are we? All right. Oh, we've got Bernhard on board from Austria. Hello, Bernhard. Great to have you with us. All right. I'm just skimming through the live chat where there is some chat going on in the live chat. Peter says, another question. Peter in Sweden, sails a Tornado. It's coming to Thessaloniki next year. The club was gifted a fantastic Hobie Pacific, complete with Magnum wings, standard sails, but no kite. So can I add an F-18 kite and kit? Yeah, the actual, with the Hobie Pacific, the geometry, not the geometry, the dimensions of the boat are actually the same as an F-18, but it's kind of like a unique feature with the Hobie Pacific is it is like an F-18, but with skeg hulls instead of daggerboard hulls. So it's a very practical boat. So yes, you could put a spinnaker kit from an F-18 on the Pacific and that would work just fine. Yeah, very nice. All right. All right. So Declan says, I was referring to downwind question on the getaway. I usually let the downhaul off. Yes. So if you've had the downhaul on, let the downhaul off for the downwind. Not easy to say. All right. Got Benjamin on board. Greetings. Welcome to the live chat and the live Q&A. We've got Spitfire Mark LXXV11. Can't work out. My Roman numerals knowledge isn't up to it, I'm afraid. But Spitfire is from Lisbon, Portugal. Great Q&A as always. I'm glad that it is hitting the spot. All right. Ryan says, Dan is the Nacra rep for Hawaii. Maybe we can make it to Texas. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I am definitely very keen to go and eat some red meat in Texas for the Nacra 50th anniversary in June next year. Another big year traveling next year. So it seems shaping up already. Okay, I'm just going to jump back into the preloaded where we've got Stephen, who hopefully is still on board in the watching live. Stephen's from Grafham Water in the UK. And so we're talking about flying the hull. Okay, we're talking about flying the hull. This is in response to the hull flying video. So Stephen just wanted to share his experience with what he's found for flying the hull. So main sheet out of the cleat and the ratchet switched off gives more control and accuracy with playing the mainsail. Personally, I'd keep the ratchet switched on, but it depends on how, the term I like to use is chewy, how much the ratchet grips the rope. But for me, I like to have the ratchet switched on because I like the clicking noise when you sheet in, and I find it just gives that little bit of resistance, which is enough. Okay, jib is set halfway, often just off flapping, then left to look after itself. Yeah, so we're sailing solo on a 16 here, by the way. Stephen's still here. I know that because he's just written still here. Good. This is interactive stuff going on here. Main traveller is inside or just near to the leeward foot strap. Yes. Sitting on the side beam. Yes. So sitting on the side beam to stop you from sliding down the boat. I think it's very important when you're going for the hull flying to be in a secure position on the boat. Now, one hazard that has been pointed out to me, and I feel it is my duty to point it out to others, whatever type of sailing you're doing, if this is our tow strap on the boat, if your tow strap is too loose and you put both feet under the tow strap. So here we go. If let's just assume that the boat is there. All right, this is our tow strap. This is our sailor. If we put both feet under the tow strap, if the boat was to capsize, there is a chance you could slide under that tow strap. And even if it's loose, it would still probably be pretty tight to get a whole person underneath it. So it's a very dangerous situation if you're capsized with both feet under the tow strap. So I would suggest, if you are going to use the tow strap for security, put 1 foot on top, 1 foot under, and kind of pin yourself in like that. But don't use it unless you are sailing something like a Dart 18, which is single trapeze, where you are using the tow strap to get your weight outboard. Don't use it like a conventional tow strap quite so much. Yeah, Stephen says always 1 foot only under the tow strap. Okay, sitting on the sidebar, beam reach or just upwind. Okay, so this is just to recap, this is for flying the hull. I would go higher still. I'd go around a close reach. So the close reach is kind of is pretty close to our footing course that we spoke about earlier. The reason I would sail a bit higher to the wind is because we're going to be in the gusts for longer. We're going to be in the same bit of wind for longer. If we're sailing on a beam reach, we're going to be sailing through different areas of wind more quickly, which is going to make it more difficult to keep that hull flying. So I would sail a bit closer to the wind. And then 10 to 12 knots of wind when solo. Yes, I would absolutely go with this. So Stephen asks, what about rig tension and boat trim? Boat trim is pretty easy, actually, when we're talking fore and aft, forwards and backwards trim. We just want to have the boat level, level with the horizon. We don't want the bows down. We don't want the bows up. If you are sailing more on a beam reach, maybe the bows up a little bit might give you a bit more wiggle room, a bit more of that buffer before we stick the nose under. But if we're sailing on a close reach, boat totally flat, is ideal, which if you're sailing 10 knots of wind single-handed, I'd say that would be with you sitting just behind the shroud, which is also quite handy because that is also the deepest part of the hull on a 16, which is going to give you the most stability. All right, so rig tension. I think if the wind is lighter, rig tension firm. Pull the rig tension tight. That is definitely going to get the hull up earlier. But yeah, I haven't really done so much with the rig tension specifically for flying a hull without it being for speed as well. But definitely, if you can't pick your hull up, if there's not enough power to get the hull up, more rig tension is always going to help. But if your hull's coming up really easily, then easing a bit of rig tension off is going to make the boat easier to manage. All right, what else have we got? How can one get the hull higher without feeling like it's about to go all the way over? I'd call that practice, but that might be because you're sailing more on a reach. If you sail closer to the wind, then your steering is going to do more to help you control the angle of flying the hull. Whereas if you're on a beam reach, it's not going to help quite as much. So sail close to the wind, it's going to make it a bit easier. And because the ideal is to get the hull flying up towards the balance point like that, because for most people, when especially who haven't practiced flying a hull quite as much, when you start lifting the hull like this, you're like, woo, it's up, I don't want to go any higher. But it's actually when you get it higher up, then the rig is balanced against the sailor and this hull, and you could keep the hull up for, you know, pretty much indefinitely. You could keep it up once you've got to that balance point, but it does take practice. And yes, you'll probably capsize a few times when finding the balance point. All right, so last one in the preloaded, and then I'll come back to the live chat. This is from Ted. All right, this is a good question. Ted is talking about the topic of reefing the mainsail when it's windy. All right. I was thinking about this earlier and I thought I've got a really good answer for that. But I would say, when would I reef the mainsail? I would reef the mainsail when every time I go, like how much wind, not the exact time at which I'd reef it, because I'd probably stop the boat and reef the mainsail with the boat stopped rather than actually while I was sailing along. But if every time you try to turn downwind, your bows start to go in, then that is an indication that less sail area is really going to help. So that would be one indicator. Another indicator is what else? Because what I find is upwind sailing, it's rarely actually too windy to be able to sail upwind. There are times when if the jib isn't eased in a gust, then it might pull you over. But other than that, I would say you can always sail upwind with the full sail on the sort of boats we're talking about. And if it's too windy to sail upwind with the full sail up, then it's probably too windy to be out. So yes, you should reef the main when it gets to that. But if when you go to turn downwind, if your bows immediately start talking about going under the water, then that very much restricts you to only being able to sail upwind, which means, yes, let's reduce the sail area so that we can actually go home. I think that's nice. All right. And I think, yeah, a good one from Stephen, who says, if you're thinking about reefing, you should reef. It's the same, the opposite end of people used to ask me, when do you know it's too windy to put the spinnaker up? My answer to that was, if you thought about putting the spinnaker up, it's not too windy. But if the thought hasn't even entered your mind, then it's probably too windy. That is what I think on those topics. Okay, so Benjamin has got an off-topic question. All right. I have an old Hobie 16, which needs a lot of TLC. What would you recommend first, a new trampoline or a new sail? Both are somewhat old and quite used. Where will I see the biggest value? Yeah, this is not off topic at all. This is on topic. This is one of the, we're not just talking about sailing the boats. We're talking about making them better. But personally, I think I would go for the trampoline. The trampoline just transforms the boat immediately. And when you replace the trampoline, replace as many of the ropes as you can as well. New trampoline, new ropes is really going to give the boat such a better feel to it. And also, you can get a trampoline for a lot less money than you can get a set of sails. If you're looking at, you know, unless you're lucky enough to find a good used set of sails. But two manufacturers that come to mind is, if you've seen any of my videos of this year with the Hobie 16, I'm using a trampoline from Salt City Sailing. And these trampolines retail at, I think, just over $300, which is an absolute bargain. It's a great trampoline. So that would be more appropriate if you're in the US. If you're in Europe, then Forward Sailing, who are a branch of Forward Whip. There's the Forward Whip semi-dry just hanging up there. There it is. Who are a branch of Forward Whip, also do a very good, well-priced aftermarket trampoline for a 16. Because if you've got a nice boat with, you know, if your hull, doesn't matter if your hulls look a bit tatty, but if you've got a nice trampoline, nice ropes, nice rigging as well, replace your rigging if you haven't done that, then sort of aesthetics wise, having old sails and old looking hulls is kind of more like that rat look kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, that's cool, that's retro, until of course your main sail rips in half or something. But then replace the sails when it's actually necessary, which would be, you know, the sail unfortunately does get to a time in its life where you'll just sheet in and the sail will rip in half because the cloth has just degraded that much that it's got no strength left to it, and it just rips in half just through the tension in the main sheet. And if that happens, you could think, well, we could get it repaired. But if you get it repaired, where the repair is, on the edge of the repair, then becomes the new weak point, and it will just rip there. And you'll end up just throwing money at the sail, which keeps just ripping again and again. So I would say be on the lookout for a used set of sails and get a new aftermarket trampoline, because let's face it, people aren't very likely to sell a trampoline used which is still in good condition, I don't think. There we go. Thought that was a pretty good answer, actually. Okay, so Stephen says, I just had a wire snap on my Hobie. Probably should check the rigging. And Stephen also, he got a trampoline from Salt City Sailing, and they did ship to the UK. Yeah, really good quality, nice people, and you could get a trampoline in whatever color you want. So mine is gray. Well, it's orange with gray trim. There we go. In case you were wondering. Yeah. Follow me on Instagram if you want pictures. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. It has been a wonderful time. I hope everybody's had a good time. It's now time to say that will do. So new video coming on Sunday. But if you're a channel member, or if you just can't handle the having to wait, become a channel member. You'll see it underneath on the main YouTube page. Underneath where the video is, there's a thing that says join. If you click there, you can then join as a YouTube Joyrider TV channel member. It's 5 units of currency, can't remember which ones, per month. And you're supporting Joyrider TV, which is what keeps it going. Thanks to everybody. But before you leave, please just hit the like button because that is free and it helps. Thanks very much. See you soon with some more.